Boeing built its newest flagship aircraft and expected American Airlines to line up immediately. 13 years later, not a single US carrier has ordered it. Not Delta, not American, and not even United. The reason behind this silent rejection is not what anyone expects. Here is what is really happening. For a company that is one of America's largest exporters and a symbol of US aviation, the question is impossible to ignore. How did Boeing build its most ambitious jet and fail to convince its biggest customers to buy it? Most people assume rejection on this scale means the product failed. The 777X did not fail. Globally, it succeeded enormously. Understanding the American silence requires understanding a fundamental mismatch that has nothing to do with quality. Rewind to the original 777. American carriers did not merely purchase that aircraft, they co-created it. United participated directly in the design process and operated the first 777 in commercial service during the 1990s. Domestic airlines ordered north of 180 examples. America was the original 777's beating heart. When Boeing began designing the successor, the room had changed. The voices that mattered most no longer carried American accents. Gulf carriers had arrived. Emirates and Qatar Airways climbed from obscurity into global aviation royalty. Boeing made a calculated decision: build the 777X for these new kings, rather than the old American loyalists. What did the Gulf giants demand? Stretch the aircraft for maximum capacity at their swelling mega hubs. Engineer oversized engines and wings capable of performing in brutal desert heat and humidity. Boeing complied with every request. The strategy worked on its own terms. Emirates became the launch customers, holding orders past 200 aircraft. Qatar followed heavily. Beyond the Gulf, Singapore Airlines, Lufthansa, Cathay Pacific, and British Airways all signed on, each commitment representing tens of billions of dollars. So the 777X attracts serious global buyers. The aircraft is genuinely desirable, which sharpens the central question: what specifically repels American carriers? Here is the revealing pattern. Study every airline that ordered the 777X, and one trait connects them. They all funnel their networks through one or two hub airports. Concentration, bottleneck, limited ground to grow. When an airline jams its entire operation through a single mega hub, that hub eventually chokes. Airbus diagnosed this years ago. The A380 Super Jumbo existed partly to let cramped airlines keep growing by carrying more passengers per flight when airports physically could not add capacity. The A380 collapsed because it was simply too large and too thirsty. But the 777-9 threads a smarter needle, big enough to relieve hub congestion, small and efficient enough to actually make economic sense. And this is exactly where American Airlines stand apart from Boeing's intended buyers. American carriers do not have a congestion emergency. Their entire network philosophy is the opposite of the Gulf model. The numbers tell the story. American Airlines spreads across 9 major hubs. Delta uses 8, United operates 7, and critically, many of these hubs sit in secondary cities: Denver, Charlotte, Minneapolis. These airports are not suffocating, they have space and room to expand. A distributed network does not need a 426-seat behemoth. It does not need engines optimized for desert performance. American carriers can move the same passengers using smaller, cheaper aircraft scattered across many growing hubs. The 777X solves a crisis they simply do not face. Now, an aircraft can still be worth buying even when it is not strictly necessary. The American Big Three compete viciously and always hunt for an edge. A 777-9 turns heads on a tarmac and impresses passengers with cutting-edge cabin technology. Even a token fleet could function as a flying advertisement. So why does the rejection still hold? Because each of the three carriers carries an individual reason that closes the door. Take Delta first, because Delta is the easiest to decode. Delta already crowned its next long-haul flagship, and it wears an Airbus badge, the A350-1000. That aircraft competes in roughly the same market slot as the 777X, but Delta already operates a substantial A350-900 fleet with around 20 additional frames on order. Slotting in the A350-1000 is seamless. Inserting a 777X would be disruptive. For Delta, the math is obvious and the decision is final. American Airlines is the genuinely complicated case. Among the big three, American runs the least ambitious long-haul network. It only beats its rivals in two international arenas. The first is Latin America. But Latin American markets remain in development. Serving them does not require a giant. The A321XLR handles those routes far more sensibly. The second arena is London, and on paper, this is where the 777X argument gets strong. Heathrow is one of the most slot-starved airports anywhere. American holds a bigger Heathrow position than Delta or United, running up to 20 daily flights into the airport. Growing capacity at Heathrow without buying brutally expensive new slots is exactly what a high-capacity aircraft enables. The 777X fits that mission. But there is a trap: British Airways. American and British Airways operate as deep transatlantic partners, feeding each other passengers across the ocean. If American aggressively expanded its Heathrow capacity, it would be competing directly against its own partner, siphoning demand BA depends on. That damages a relationship American cannot afford to lose. So American has every incentive to stay restrained at Heathrow. American also carries scar tissue from past fleet mistakes. During the 2010s, the airline bet on the A319 and the Boeing 787-8. Those smaller aircraft solved an immediate problem, replacing tired MD-80s and Boeing 767s. But over time, their limited size made it harder to optimize the network and pack in lucrative premium seats. The aircraft were too one-dimensional to anchor a fleet. The 777-9, enormous and inflexible in its own way, represents one-dimensionality from the opposite extreme. American has learned to distrust extremes. United is the carrier most likely to eventually crack and order the 777X. United flies an all-Boeing wide-body fleet and has never operated a single Airbus wide-body. United also commands a formidable trans-Pacific network linking San Francisco to Asia's largest cities. Those long, dense routes genuinely could absorb the 777-9's capacity. But United is blocked by its own 777-300ER fleet. United adopted the 300ER deliberately late, ordering only after the 777X had already been announced. That timing was strategic genius. Boeing needed something to fill the production gap before the 777X arrived, so United volunteered as the bridge and pocketed deep discounts in return. The consequence is that United's 777-300ER fleet is the youngest of its type in the world, averaging around 8 years old. United has roughly a decade before replacement becomes urgent. Any 777X order from United realistically waits until the 2030s. There is one final name worth watching: Alaska Airlines. After absorbing Virgin America and merging with Hawaiian, Alaska has grown into a credible challenger to the Big Three. The airline is building a Boeing 787 fleet and chasing trans-Pacific ambition, aiming to convert Seattle into a national gateway to Asia. The complication is Seattle itself. SeaTac is severely constrained, already handling record traffic that exceeds its original design, and the airport cannot easily expand because it sits on a flattened hill surrounded by development. That kind of physical ceiling is precisely the problem the 777-9 was built to defeat. Combine that with the shared Seattle heritage of Alaska and Boeing, and a conversation becomes at least imaginable. But imaginable is not likely. Alaska will probably squeeze growth through other Northwest gateways like Portland first. Still, on pure operational logic, Alaska holds a stronger 777X case than either Delta or American. Strip everything down and the conclusion is genuinely surprising. The 777X is not sitting unsold in America because it is a weak aircraft. It is sitting unsold because Boeing engineered it for airlines that fight congestion at giant choke point hubs. American carriers built their entire model around the opposite idea, scattering operations across many hubs with room to breathe. The 777X is a brilliant aircraft. It was just designed to rescue someone else's airline from a problem that American aviation never had.